Okay, Twisted Fate AD Carry, a pick that literally came out of nowhere, but that keeps terrorizing the bot lane to this day. Twisted Fate has always been a mid laner and never seen success or even play to begin with in the marksman position, but all that changed when Riot chose to introduce AD ratios and crit scalings to his kit, and to great effect. After the champion got hit with these carefully chosen buffs, the play rate absolutely exploded overnight. However, this was not another stupid, blind instance of new toy syndrome, because, as a matter of fact, Twisted Fate AD Carry is one of the best bot lane champions you can play right now. The second best to be precise, only getting outdone by the ridiculously broken Senna AD Carry, and the reason is very straightforward. Twisted Fate had always had good synergies with ADC items due to his attack speed and focus on autos, but the best part, the reason he's a tier above the rest when compared to traditional marksmen, his gold card, a point-and-click stun on an auto attack, is a tool many champions can only dream of. The majority of ADC players are at least low-key frustrated with the role due to lack of perceived agency. They feel like they need to rely on their team to make plays, but Twisted Fate and his gold cards completely flipped the script here. And people are having lots of success with this champion, despite most of them using unoptimized runes and items. However, in this video I will give you optimal rune and item suggestions, as well as show you the simple yet effective playstyle that allows you to make the most of Twisted Fate AD Carry. And of course, this video is only a starting point, and practice is what you truly need to excel at any one champion, no matter how simple the strategy might look. But this is where the coaching service from my sponsor SoloQ Solution can help you, because, let's face it, practice is nice and all, but practicing correctly and intentionally is actually quite difficult. However, SoloQ Solution is a coaching company that provides you with the best challenger coaches you can get, and in private one-on-one sessions, your challenger coach will tell you exactly what and how you need to practice to see the best results. An expert's outside perspective will do wonders for you in any area of your life you want to improve, and League of Legends is no different in that regard. Evidently, since SoloQ Solution has already helped countless players who had been hard-stuck silver for years to break into diamond elo within the span of a single season. Of course, the practice part is still necessary, because playing lots of ranked games by yourself in addition to attending the coaching sessions is mandatory so you can actually implement what the challenger coach teaches you. But if League of Legends is your main hobby, the benchmark is playing at least 15 hours of solo queue per week, the coaching service from SoloQ Solution will allow you to see fast improvements in your rank. No matter what champions you play, by the way, as they have challenger coaches for all 5 roles. If you're interested, you can book your first session right away following the link in the description. But anyway, let's now look at the most common rune page for Twisted Fate AD Carry and how to optimize it, because there is slight room for optimization. The rune page in question is Free Footwork, Overheal, Legend Alacrity and Coup de Grace, with Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight secondary. Now, Free Footwork is a great keystone for Twisted Fate, and I would advise to use this, because Twisted Fate is all about kiting. He has short attack range, a little below average, but getting into range and getting his gold card off is huge payoff, so Free Footwork allows you to do that, also keeps you safe during the lane phase, allows you to farm up during the lane because you're harder to catch. It just does everything you need, and you don't really need more damage in the late game because you have such great attack speed scalings. However, the second rune on the precision path is a rune I have some issues with. Many people pick Overheal here, and I believe this to be a mistake. Overheal can be strong in the late game if you have sufficient ways to trigger it, aka self-healing, aka lifesteal, but Twisted Fate actually does not really want to buy lifesteal, and the only form of health regeneration is Fleet Footwork, his keystone. So Overheal, I mean, the rune is in a very bad spot in general in the meta right now, the only real viable user being MissFortune and maybe Smolder, and Twisted Fate with this build especially just doesn't cut it. In the majority of your games, the rune will do nothing for you, and you are much better off picking Triumph here. Triumph has great value at any stage of the game, not only keeping you healthy, which is important if you don't have that much health regeneration in your build or your runes otherwise, and also the 20 gold per takedown will snowball a little bit better than 0 gold per takedown, of course, but it does make a difference, especially since your 2-item power spike is so potent, as you will see. Any piece of gold matters. And a quick side note here, Presence of Mind is definitely not needed for this champion, despite him being known as kind of a caster, because Twisted Fate AD Carry does do a lot with auto attacks, and doesn't run into mana problems anyway, because he only really uses his W frequently, and W also has the option to, if you farm with blue card, for example, to regenerate mana by itself, so Presence of Mind is completely unnecessary. Now in the next slot, Legend Alacrity is actually quite strong. Yes, you could go Legend Bloodline here, but I personally think Legend Alacrity is best. The champion just scales so well with attack speed that the faster you get it, the better, because it's your main source of damage. You do everything with your auto attacks. Even the speed of your point-and-click stun, the speed in which you get the auto attack off does depend on attack speed, and Legend Alacrity, I mean any point matters, but you need to keep one thing in mind. You don't want to overcap on attack speed, which can happen due to your E and your build, but the magic number with Legend Alacrity is, if my math is correct, 158% attack speed from items. Just make sure when you itemize Twisted Fate to not exceed this number. When you pick Legend Alacrity, when you don't, it's 18% higher, of course, because you overcap at 2.5 attacks per second, but we'll get to that in the item section. Now, Coup de Grace is your general good stuff rune. It just does the most work in most games. Twisted Fate does not have any synergies with Last Stand, and Cut Down can be situational. It can be good against tanky compositions, of course, it's an option, but only really if you don't buy any HP in your item build. In general, sticking to Coup de Grace is never wrong. Now for the secondary runes, I actually really like Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight. Magical Footwear is great because you save 300 gold on boots, which means you get your 2-item power spike 300 gold faster. It's just pure logic, and again, as you will see, this power spike is massive for Twisted Fate. Getting boots early can be good in some matchups, so you can go for different secondary runes if you want to, but for the most part, Magical Footwear plus Cosmic Insight is a good value in most of your games. Also noteworthy, you don't even have Biscuit Delivery on this page. Yes, you can do this in difficult lanes, Biscuit Delivery for a little bit more health, but again, Biscuit Delivery, many champions take it for the mana, and Twisted Fate doesn't really need that. Now, Cosmic Insight gives you more access to your summoner spells, and also reducing the trinket cooldown, so it's another one of these runes like Coup de Grace, which you can slap onto any champion and it will do good work. Anyway, just swap Overheal for Triumph and pick this rune page every single game if you want to. It's a good starting point, and it certainly does the job for Twisted Fate. Now for the item build, you definitely want this following 2-item core in every single one of your games. You start with a Doran's Blade, of course, but your item core is Static Shiv first, then upgrade boots to Berserker's Greaves, and then get Rapid Fire Cannon. Static Shiv is a strong first item for most AD carries because it's very cheap and helps with wave clear. Especially when you combine that with Twisted Fate's Q and your red card, you can clear waves very fast, allowing you to buy time for yourself, essentially. You push faster than the enemy, you have more time to roam, and make use of that gold card in early skirmishes. Additionally, the item builds out of Noon Quiver, a very strong component item, which is always a plus for a first item for marksman champions. Now your boots upgrade is actually debatable, it depends on what items you want to get afterwards, because as I've said, you don't want to overcap, you want to not reach more than 158% attack speed in items, so you can go for Boots of Swiftness if you want to, if you get more attack speed from your late game items, and also if you want a little bit more mobility, because, as I've already hinted at, Twisted Fate scales very well with movement speed, as it allows you to apply your gold card more consistently. However, speaking of that gold card, Rapid Fire Cannon is just a supreme item for Twisted Fate, as it increases your auto attack range, which means increasing the range of your gold card, so you can stun people from farther away. Honestly, this item is where you can really start making plays on the map, where you can start teamfighting, grouping with the team, because you will have high utility no matter what, even if you fell behind, which is quite difficult on Twisted Fate, but even if, as soon as you hit that 2-item power spike, you will be always useful, because you can just stun people, point and click, and if your teammates are in position, they can follow up on that. It's a very clear signal, even allowing you to shot call random solo queue teammates. So yeah, Rapid Fire Cannon is where you can truly start making stuff happen with Twisted Fate and leading your team to victory. But in an ideal world, of course, you also deal some damage yourself, and this is where your late game items come into play. There are 7 items we need to talk about here, not all of them are created equal, so to speak, but I will list them first and then talk over them one by one. So the full item list for the late game would be Stormrazor, Kraken Slayer, Rageblade, Terminus, Trinity Force, and Wit's End, and Zhonya's Hourglass. These are the 7 items you need to keep in the back of your head. Now the first item, Stormrazor, is actually a trap in my opinion. Stormrazor is a strong item, especially when you go for these Energizer builds, however, it is a good early game item that tends to fall off later on. Many Twisted Fate players pick this item as a third full item, so pretty much in the late game, where it's not really at its strongest anymore, but they still want the perceived synergy with the other Energizer effects, but in my opinion it's completely unnecessary and you could buy something better in every single game. I included it in this list just to draw attention to it. I think it's a mistake to buy this third, but many people do it, and it still works because Twisted Fate is just so good. He can get away with unoptimized builds. However, the other 6 items on the list are truly powerful, each in their own rights, each in their, well, own situational matchups, or depends on how you want to build the champion in general, but let's talk about them. Kraken Slayer is phenomenal for damage because Twisted Fate is very good at attacking a single target consistently, because with a max rank gold card, they will be locked in place for 2 seconds, allowing you to get tons of auto attacks off. Essentially, Kraken Slayer gives you a big reward for landing that stun, because it will then convert the stun into a lot of damage, because as they're standing still they can't defend themselves, and you can keep ramping that Kraken Slayer passive. A very similar idea is with the item Rageblade, also having synergies with Twisted Fate's E, which is another big damage increase, also providing ramping attack damage as you keep attacking, so Rageblade is a very good item if you chose to go boost of Swiftness instead of Berserker's Greaves. However, one of the best items for Twisted Fate in the late game is in my opinion Terminus, because it really does everything you need. It provides AD, attack speed, and on-hit damage, which are all stats you care about, but most importantly, it provides percent armor penetration, which is always very crucial when you go into the late game, because base armor scales with levels, so even against squishies, it will do a lot of work. But against tanks, it's absolutely mandatory. Additionally, Twisted Fate can be quite vulnerable because when you woke up and auto-attack, well, your primary target is stunned ideally, but their allies could still attack you, so the armor and magic resist will make it a little harder for the enemy to one-shot you. In a similar fashion, the HP from Triforce will help you, as well as make it more rewarding to keep attacking with W. You will be able to trigger Spellblade quite frequently due to your W and your Q, but the stat profile also is quite strong, similar as to why it is strong on the champion Ashe. The movement speed especially sticks out. Most of the items in your builds don't have movement speed except Rapid Fire Cannon, but getting that extra movement speed while kiting on Twisted Fate is quite crucial, because it allows you to get more gold cards off more consistently. Now the last two items are also quite strong, each in their own right, Wit's End and Zhonya's Hourglass providing, well, the first one providing magic resist and the latter providing armor. So you will be even harder to shut down for enemy mages, especially when you combine this with Terminus, because you have just so much MR plus the tenacity. You're actually a lot tougher than you look, especially when you get these triumph triggers throughout the fight, keeping you even healthier. But keep in mind that Wit's End provides a lot of attack speed, so please don't overcap, don't waste stats overcapping with the attack speed limit. However, the last item in this list, Zhonya's Hourglass, another one of these key components here, because many AD carries are just stuck with Guardian Angel and cannot make use of the great stasis effect, but Twisted Fate with the AP ratios in his kit can buy Zhonya's Hourglass instead. Zhonya's active effect needs a little bit of skill to be used efficiently, but it's honestly so OP, and especially on an AD carry, you're a prime target, the enemy will try to get to you as often as they can, so if you can simply counter this at will by pressing Zhonya's, it is a night and day difference. But as I've said, you can mix and match these items as you seem fit, just make sure to not overcap, and the rest should fall into place, especially when you keep matchups in the back of your head a little bit. For example, against a Rengar plus Talon, you want Zhonya's rather early, but I mean that's pretty much self-explanatory. So now that we got that out of the way, let's jump into the analysis so you can see the Twisted Fate game plan in action. So at a first glance, you might think that Twisted Fate would be at a disadvantage in lane because of his attack range. With 525 range, he gets outranged by the average ADC, 550 range, but he can more than make up for this with his pick a card. The fact he has access to a point-and-click stun at any time is honestly ridiculous, and he can easily outpressure the enemy in most matchups just with the threat of this spell. It is honestly very versatile too, allowing Twisted Fate to push the wave, deal poke damage with a red card, but you of course have to be mindful when you put it on cooldown like that so you don't invite the enemy to punish you. However, the spell gives you unreal amounts of utility and playmaking potential, and it is the main reason why Twisted Fate AD Carry has such high overall impact. Because for the most part, champions in the marksman position provide very little for their team, except for damage of course. Twisted Fate, however, is different, as you can see. And evidently, this makes jungle ganks very attractive for your team, since you provide such easy setups. But even in bad situations, Twisted Fate is a lot tougher than the average marksman, as Gold Card provides him with a form of self-peel here. Especially during the early game, this is almost as good for defensive purposes as having a mobility spell, since at this stage, stopping a single attacker in their tracks is all you need. And while Twisted Fate mostly just wants to farm it up during the lane phase to reach his enormous 2 items power spike, as consistently as possible of course, he is honestly not even that bad at ganking mid lane, a unique trait not many marksmen possess. After pushing out the minions with your wave clear tools, you can use these roams to create meaningful opportunities for your team with your gold card. That entire sequence was started and guided by Twisted Fate, which is a prime example of how much agency and solo carry potential this champion provides. And that's quite crucial against the background of all the people claiming that ADCs wouldn't have agency in solo queue at all. Twisted Fate is the solution here. But of course, the real agency comes in the mid-game when you complete your most important power spike of Static Shift plus Rapid Fire Cannon. Due to the extended auto range, catching people with Gold Card is both safe and easy now. And speaking of catching people, a common problem many marksman players have is that they don't know when to farm and when to fight. They feel like they have to choose between one or the other, but Twisted Fate's ultimate is the perfect tool if you struggle with this mid-game macro dilemma. Always remember to cycle pick a card while casting your ultimate, so you have the gold card ready as soon as you appear with 0 delay. In late game teamfights, Twisted Fate is not difficult to play either. First things first, actually reaching your late game build is very likely because you generate so much gold from your passive completely for free, and once you have the items you play exactly like any other auto attack based /crit marksman. You stay at the edge of the fight, autoing the closest targets while also throwing out stuns with W as often as possible. Especially with Terminus, your damage will always be meaningful, even against tanks, but in the unlikely scenario that you fell behind in items, the enemy still cannot ignore you. I mean, other AD carries couldn't provide much in such a case, but it will be very difficult for the enemy to ignore you when you simply stun them every couple of seconds. Usually when I close out a video, I promote another piece of content of mine, but honestly, all I want you to do right now is to just go and play a couple of games with TF AD carry. I mean it, especially when you are frustrated with the marksman role, Twisted Fate will give you an entirely new perspective.